He betrayed me and tried to destroy me, but my strength made me turn around and win everything back. I never imagined that a single day could change my life so much. My name is Beatrice. I'm 32 years old. I'm an accountant, and I always thought I had everything under control. But that day, sitting in my father's lawyer's office, I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. My father had passed away weeks before, and I was still trying to come to terms with his absence. But along with the grief came the reality I didn't want to face. My inheritance was conditioned by very strict rules, which my father created precisely to protect me from self-interested people. And I had realized that Renato, my beloved husband, wasn't who I believed. He was only interested in my money. It's not easy to realize that someone you shared years of your life with, someone you loved, was only there for their own gain. At first, I felt a mixture of fear, anger, despair, and even shame, because I blamed myself for not having seen it sooner. I felt my heart race as Dr. Ricardo Mendez explained each clause of the will. With each word, I understood more deeply that my father not only loved me, but also knew the cruelty some people could have. This gave me a certain comfort, but at the same time, a huge responsibility. I had to abide by those rules, protect my own assets, and, above all, protect myself. Renato began to show his true colors, trying to pressure me, emotionally blackmail me as if I would give in just because he was my husband. The feeling of betrayal and manipulation was overwhelming. I felt my eyes well up, but I took a deep breath, realizing that crying wouldn't solve anything. I needed to think. That day, for the first time, I realized how much I had neglected myself in my marriage. I spent so much time worrying about pleasing Renato, about keeping the peace, that I ended up forgetting myself. My life had become all about him, and I couldn't let him destroy everything my father had planned. Anger mixed with the clarity of what was happening began to empower me. I needed to act. I felt a kind of awakening, as if something inside me said, "It's your turn now, Beatrice. It's your life, your choices, your future." The first concrete decision I made that day was to seek out Sophia, my longtime friend, to vent. I needed to vent all the confusion of feelings that consumed me: fear, pain, anxiety, and also the hope that I could turn things around. Talking to her made me realize that I wasn't alone, that I had support, and that I deserved to live a life free from manipulation. It was like a light had been turned on inside me. I realized that change had to start with me, right then and there. Afterward, I sat alone at home, watching Luna and Max, my 2 dogs I'd recently rescued. They were there, simply looking at me with those trusting eyes, as if telling me everything would be okay. It was there that I felt, for the first time, that I could find real, independent happiness, that I could rebuild my life, step by step, away from Renato and the situations that suffocated me. It was the beginning of a transformation that I didn't yet know how far it would go, but I was determined to discover. The next morning, I woke with a strange sense of freedom, mixed with fear. I still felt pain, a pang in my chest from everything I had discovered, but also a clarity I had never felt before. That was the day I decided to face Renato once and for all. He tried to argue, to use his usual emotional manipulation, but something had changed inside me. Every word he said sounded hollow. I no longer wanted to give in, no longer wanted to be held hostage by a relationship that consumed me. Feeling that fear, that anxiety, was normal, but I learned that day that they no longer needed to paralyze me. The divorce wasn't easy. I had to face paperwork, lawyers, meetings, and above all, my own feelings. I felt ashamed for having let myself be deceived, saddened by the realization that the love I felt wasn't reciprocated, and angry at everything Renato tried to do to manipulate me. But at the same time, I felt an enormous strength growing within me. It was as if each step of the process was strengthening me, reminding me that I was capable of fighting for myself. For the first time, I truly felt like the protagonist of my own story. While all this was happening, I decided to use the waiting period for my inheritance to rediscover who I was. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college, and dedicated myself to photography. I went for long walks, breathed in the natural air, and felt my thoughts gather. Each small step made me feel alive and connected to myself. What seemed like a moment of despair gradually transformed into a time of self-discovery. I realized that I didn't need anyone to complete me. that my happiness could come from within. Caring for Luna and Max also became a form of silent therapy. Seeing these dogs, who had suffered before, now trusting me, brought me a deep sense of responsibility and true love. I felt a connection that didn't depend on self-interest or manipulation. It was genuine. Every caress, every walk, every moment with them reinforced that I could be happy simply and honestly. I began to realize that if they could trust again and get back on their feet, so could I. And then came the day I realized I was no longer afraid of being alone. That fear that paralyzed me, that made me accept things I shouldn't, was diminishing. I felt a strength I never imagined I had, a desire to live my life fully, without depending on the approval or company of someone who didn't respect me. It was the beginning of something greater, the awareness that I could choose my path, that my happiness depended on me, and that I was finally ready to rebuild my life with freedom and dignity. One of the most memorable moments of that period was when I sat alone on my porch, staring at the horizon. I felt a mixture of exhaustion, pain, and a kind of quiet relief. For years, my life had been shaped by other people's expectations, by the fear of displeasing them, by my inability to confront Renato. But in that moment, I realized that all that suffering had taught me something essential. I needed to put myself first, without guilt, without fear, without shame. And it was there, with Luna by my side and Max sleeping at my feet, that I felt a clarity I'd never known. That same day, I began organizing my finances with more attention and awareness. As an accountant, I'd always had control over other people's figures, but never over my own financial life in such a strategic way. I felt proud to realize I could be independent, that I didn't need to depend on Renato or anyone else to secure my future. Every financial decision, every plan I made me feel more secure and empowered. That sense of control, which I previously sought from others, was finally in my hands. I also allowed myself to feel angry, cry, and write about everything I was going through. I started writing down my thoughts in a notebook, something I had never done so intensely. Writing helped me organize my mind, understand my emotions, and transform internal chaos into clarity. Each word was a step toward freedom. Each written sentence was a reminder that I was rebuilding my life, step by step, slowly but with determination. I realized that Sophia's friendship became even more valuable during that period. She supported me without judgment, encouraged me to make difficult decisions, and celebrated every small victory. Feeling this support made me realize that true relationships exist and that we don't need to submit to toxic relationships to be loved. That friendship became my safe haven, my reminder that I deserved respect, care, and genuine love. And it was that very day, looking at the dogs, reflecting on my finances, and feeling Sophia's presence even from a distance, that I realized something inside me had changed forever. I was no longer the insecure, submissive Beatrice who would accept anything to maintain a marriage. I was becoming someone who knew her worth, recognized her limits, and, above all, was ready to be happy on her own, without depending on anyone else's approval. Over time, I realized that every small gesture of independence strengthened me. On that particular day, I decided to treat myself to something I'd always wanted, a professional camera. It wasn't just a whim, but a symbol that I was investing in myself, my passions, and my happiness. I held the camera in my hands and felt a pride I hadn't felt in years. It was as if each click was a reminder that I could capture my own story, create my own narrative, without relying on anyone else to validate it. That same day, I went to a dog rescue I'd always wanted to help. Seeing so many animals in need of care and love, I felt a deep connection to my own journey. Luna and Max taught me that even those who have suffered can recover, and the animals there reinforce this message of resilience and hope. I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt since before my wedding. Every hug with a rescue dog, every gesture of affection, reminded me that I could make a difference in the lives of others while rebuilding my own. There were also moments of insecurity and fear, of course. I had to face Renato and deal with the divorce legally, and with each meeting I felt a mixture of anger, anxiety, and relief at finally realizing the truth. But that same afternoon, I realized that my strength didn't come from his absence, but from everything I was building for myself. I was learning to trust my own ability to make decisions, to protect myself, to be happy without depending on anyone who didn't value me. That day, I also allowed myself to feel gratitude. Gratitude for having survived emotionally until then, for having friends like Sophia, for having the chance to get to know myself better, for having the opportunity to invest in my passions, and for having Luna and Max who reminded me daily of the value of small gestures. It was a simple but powerful feeling that gave me the strength to keep going. I finally understood that happiness and independence can go hand in hand, and that I deserved all of this without guilt. And it was there, on that day of clarity, action, and small achievements, that I realized my life was changing irreversibly. I was transforming pain into learning, suffering into strength, loss into freedom. For the first time in years, I felt I no longer needed to hide or deny myself to please someone. I was ready to take control of my life, my future, and my happiness. The despair and anger still existed, but they were now fuel for something greater, my own liberation. Finally, the day arrived when I received confirmation that the inheritance had been fully released. It was a mixture of relief, joy, and a kind of silent victory. I felt tears well up, but they weren't just tears of happiness. They were tears of everything I had been through, of the fear I had overcome, the manipulation I had faced, and the strength I had discovered within myself. It was at that moment that I realized that every step I had taken, every difficult decision I had made, had brought me to this point. I no longer needed to be afraid. I could live my life fully. That same day, I decided to use part of my inheritance to help charities and support causes that had always touched me, including animal rescue. I wanted my pain to be transformed into something positive, into hope for others. Feeling that my choices could truly impact lives brought me genuine happiness, unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was as if I had finally found my purpose, something that depended on no one but myself. I also scheduled a final conversation with Renato to finally end any ties. It wasn't easy, and I still felt a pang of anger and sadness, but I was prepared. For years, I'd allowed him to control my emotions and decisions. That day, I realized he would no longer have any control over my life. I could finally breathe free. Every word I said, every gesture, was a reminder that my life was now in my hands, and that I could be happy without depending on anyone who didn't deserve my respect. At the end of that day, I sat back on the porch, watching the sunset with Luna and Max by my side. I felt peace, but also renewed energy. I knew challenges still lay ahead, that life wasn't about instant victories. But there was a stronger, more aware, more capable Beatrice. For the first time, I felt that everything I'd been through was worth it, because it had brought me my own freedom, my emotional and financial independence, and the chance to build a life truly my own. Today, I can say that I still deal with some pain from the past, but I don't let it define who I am. My life is now guided by my choices, my values, and what truly makes me happy. I'm proud of myself, of the woman I discovered I am, and of the strength I found within my own heart. And even though the journey has been painful, I know that the freedom and happiness I've achieved are worth every tear, every fear, and every battle. I won, and no one can take that away from me. Now every morning I wake up is a reminder that my life belongs to me. I don't depend on anyone to validate my choices or my happiness. I still have scars, of course, but they are proof of my resilience, my ability to face challenges, and stand firm even when all seemed lost. Every step I take today is conscious, my decision, and it gives me a sense of power and motivation I never imagined I could feel before. I realize that the fear that once paralyzed me has become fuel. Instead of preventing me from taking action, it now reminds me of what I've overcome and encourages me to continue growing. I'm no longer the person who accepted less than I deserved. Every decision I make is based on self-love, clarity, and strength. With each achievement, no matter how small, I feel I can face any challenge life throws at me. Investing in my passions, such as painting, photography, and caring for Luna and Max, has brought me concrete, daily happiness. I've discovered that fulfillment doesn't come solely from money or status, but from feeling like I'm living my life authentically, contributing to something bigger, and connecting with myself and others. This realization motivates me to continue exploring what I can achieve without relying on external approval. I've also learned to recognize toxic relationships before they destroy me. Today, I can differentiate true love from self-interest, genuine care from manipulation. This clarity protects me and allows me to invest my energy only in people who add value to my life. Each step in this direction strengthens me and makes me realize that my autonomy is, in fact, the greatest victory I've achieved so far. Most importantly, even in difficult times, I learned to trust myself. Every obstacle overcome, every tear shed, every difficult decision made has brought me to the person I am today. Strong, confident, resilient, and motivated to live life to the fullest. I feel a constant motivation to continue growing, helping others, and building a life I love, without ever giving up my worth or my freedom.